Beginning of the problems are similar to, actually exactly the same, is what you did in the last lesson. And in your packet, you have this step-by-step process of what buttons to push there. But we'll run through that process together as well for how to enter data and find a regression. So on your calculator, I'm going to turn it on. And from the main home screen, press the Stat button, which is top middle. And we're going to press Edit to be able to enter our data. If you have any data in there from the last lesson or from something else, we need to get rid of it. The way you get rid of it is by pressing your up button so that your list name is dark, where it says L1 or L2, and press clear. It is very important that you use the clear button and not the delete button. If you use the delete button, that entire list will go away, which will cause us a problem. It's a fixable problem, but it's a problem nonetheless. So just make sure that you press the clear button instead of the delete button. Then same thing for that other list of data. I'm going to go up and press clear, get rid of all those numbers so I have a blank screen to start. In the chart, you can see that there are 2 rows that say speed and 2 rows that say fuel economy. We are going to put all of those speeds into the L1 and all of the fuel economies into the L2 in order. And it's important that you put them in an order because these things are matching pairs. So for the speeds, it starts at 15 and counts up by 5s. And then carefully enter all the fuel economies into the other one, being careful of typos. Pay attention to what it is that you're typing in. When you are finished entering your data, you need to make sure that those 2 dotted lines are right next to each other, that they are lined up with each other. Since the data is coming in pairs, we should have exactly the same number for both of them. If you don't, when you try to proceed, you're going to get an error that says error dim mismatch, which means that the dimensions are mismatched. You have more of one type of data than another type of data, so it can't plot those points appropriately. So this is the same as what you did in the last lesson for entering to find a linear regression. So that's step 1 here, is enter the data into the stat menu. Our step 2 is where things change just slightly. In the last lesson, we were doing a linear regression because our data was following a straight line pattern. In this lesson, our data is going to follow a curved or parabolic pattern, so we're going to find a quadratic regression. We go to the same place to find that option, though. So to find that, we press Stat again, kind of right in the middle of the calculator. We're going to go over to the Calculate menu. And in the last lesson, you chose choice 4 for linear regression. In this lesson, we're going to choose choice 5 for quadratic regression. And we press Enter. It doesn't do anything right away, so then just press Enter again, and it gives us our equation. You'd want to write down these values to about 3 decimal places. So our equation would be y is equal to negative 0.008 x squared plus 0.746x plus 13.472. Okay. So in the question for number 1, you need to make sure you always do everything you're asked. The first sentence just tells us what our data is and then says that it's shown in the table. Then it says find a quadratic model. The quadratic model is the equation. So the first thing we need to do is write down this equation to about 3 decimal places. Make sure that in your rounding, you never let your a value become 0. Okay, so it's pretty close to 0, but if we would round that a value all to 0, it's no longer a quadratic model because that would get rid of that x squared term. It would then be a linear model. So we always need to make sure that no matter how small it is, we do in fact have an a value. Okay, a cannot be 0, so don't round that all the way to 0. Yes.
So, like, if the decimal point, like, for the A value was, like, 0.00008196, we would have to go to
Go as many places as it takes to make sure that you have a value for A, even if it's more than 3 decimal places.
When I type this in and do the right, I don't get any equation.
Press enter again, and then it'll appear.
Oh.
The first time it just says, like, are you sure this is what you want? And then press enter again to make it happen. The last sentence of the question says, use the model, so that's using our equation, to find the speed that will maximize the fuel economy. So how fast should we go if we want to get the best mileage out of this? Not according to the data in the chart, but using our equation as our model. So to do that, what we're going to do is graph our scatter plot and our equation. The way you do that is you go into y equals, and this is the same as it was for the previous lesson. Clear any equations that you may have in there, and make sure that your plot is on. So that word plot one should be darkened. If it is not, the way that you make it dark is by pressing your up arrow so that you're blinking on top of it and press enter. And that will make that plot dark. Once you've done that, you don't need to do it for every problem. It will stay on until you turn it off. Then, in the equation, there are 2 options for how you can get your equation in there. Maybe the easier option is to just type out what you just wrote down. So you just wrote down the equation with all the decimals to 3. So you could just type that in there. Whatever it was, negative 0.008 x squared, whatever. So you could just type it in. Another option, and it does give you which buttons to push to do this in your packet, is to press VARS, which is next to the clear button. Choose choice statistics, since that's what we're doing is statistics. Over to EQ for equation and hit enter, and it types it all in there for me. Some people in the other class were having some problems in that it wasn't actually typing it all in. It was only typing in their A value and then the X, and then it left a little box for the squared, and it didn't type anything else in. So I think that might be a little bit of a glitch in the new operating system that some of the calculators have. So if you're finding that that's what yours is doing, just type it into 3 decimal places. That little round of rounding isn't going to make a huge difference in our answers. So if that's happening for you, just type it in what you wrote down to 3 decimal places. But so in some way, get that equation in there. And then to be able to see a picture of it, we're going to press zoom. And from that zoom menu, we're going to scroll through until we see the option that says zoom stat, since we're doing statistics. And that will set a good window for us. And we're going to hit enter. We'll be able to see our data, and we'll be able to see the equation that should fit the data. Now, when you graph it, if you see your data and you see your equation is very far off of your data, something went wrong. Okay. So the line should be going pretty close to the middle of the data.
I have 2 lines. Is that okay?
You didn't clear all of your equations then. So you have an equation somewhere else in your...
Connecting the dots and then a line.
Oh, okay. That's a different type of plot. We can turn that off if you want.
I mean, I don't really mind.
Okay.
So for the homework, do you just want us to write like the A, X, and Y values and then graph it?
I'll give you specific what you need to do for each homework question because the directions are a little confusing on those problems. So I'll give you exactly what I want for the answers for each of those. So then to answer that question, it says use the model, which is the equation, not the data, to find the speed that will maximize our economy. So maximize, we're looking for the highest point on this curve. We learned a long time ago, way back in December, I think, how to find a maximum on a curve, but we'll go through that process again. To find a maximum, you're going to press second and then your trace button. And that brings up this menu. Second and then trace. We want to choose the option that says maximum and hit enter. It will ask us a sequence of 3 questions. The first question is going to say left bound. What you want to do is on your screen, locate the little blinking dot and make sure that it is on the left of where you think your answer is. If it isn't, move it to the left, but mine already is, so I'll just hit enter. Then the question changes to ask about the right bound. So I'm going to take that blinking dot, and move it over to the right-hand side of where I believe my answer is and press enter. The third question it will ask you is for a guess. You don't need to do anything here other than hit enter. Your calculator will be able to guess well enough on its own. So you can just hit enter. At the bottom, the word changes to maximum, and it gives us our answer. So for this particular vehicle, to maximize their fuel economy, they should go about 45.5 miles per hour, and they will get about 30.4 miles per gallon. Okay? Since the question said find the speed that maximizes the fuel economy, all we need to report for our answer is that 45.5. That's the speed that will maximize it. Okay? If it just asks for the maximum, you could give the x and y. When in doubt, I guess I would say give the x and y because it will be safer. If your y is a little bit off of mine or your x is a little bit off of mine, but pretty close, it could be because I had the entire equation typed in. If you just did the 3 decimal place equation, that'll make a slight difference, but I'm not going to be that picky about it. It should still be really pretty close.
How close? Because I got 46.6. Is that close?
Was your equation the same as mine?
I rounded to 3 places.
But other than that, it was the same?
Yeah,
Yeah, then I guess that's the rounding error. All right. All right, we're going to go on to question 2. Question 2, same type of question. We're going to start by entering our data. So to enter our data, we go stat, edit, and we're going to clear those by putting our cursor up on the list name and pressing clear, enter, and all of it will go away. Clear, enter. And then we're going to type the months into our first list. And the rates into the second list. Again, those dotted lines should always match up. So if they don't, that means you missed a data point somewhere or you typed something twice somewhere. Something went wrong with your data entry if those dotted lines are not matching up. So part A of the problem says find the best fitting quadratic model. So we're going to go to stat, over to calculate, and choose choice 5 for quadratic regression. Nothing will happen right away, so hit enter, and we'll get our answer there of our A, B, and C value to write out our equation. Okay, so again, about 3 decimal places. And on this problem, it doesn't really matter, but make sure that in your rounding, you go far enough that you don't ever get a 0 for A. That will matter on your homework. So that would be the answer for part A. When it says find the best fitting quadratic model, it means that quadratic equation. Then part B, according to the model, so not the data in the chart. Models don't always perfectly match the data, but they're helpful to let us know what happens maybe between data or outside of data. So according to the model, during which month did we have the highest interest rate and what was that rate? So for this, we need a graph. So we're going to go into y equals. I'm going to clear the equation I had in there. My plot one should still be on, so I don't need to worry about that anymore, but I need to get the equation in there either by typing it in or by going through the process of having the calculator put it in by going vars, choice 5 for statistics, and over to EQ for equation. Once you have that entered, instead of just hitting graph, we always need to refocus our graph. So always go to zoom and choose choice 9 for zoom stat. So without many data points, it's hard to get a great curve. This one goes kind of nicely by the first couple, pretty close to the last one, but those middle 2 are a little off. When you don't have a lot of data, it's probably not going to hit everything perfectly.
Mine is like the same shape, but only hit one of the data points.
You could check your points and make sure that you entered your data correctly, or it could be that your calculator chose a slightly different window than mine, so something might be exaggerated. So for part B, we want to know when we had the highest interest rate and what that rate was. So highest means maximum. So to find our maximum, we go second, trace, and choose choice 4 for maximum. Find the blinking cursor. The first question is left bound, so I need to go over so that I'm to the left of where I believe the answer to be, and press enter. Then it changes to right bound, so I go to the right of where I believe the answer is and press enter. At the top of your screen, then, you should have these two little triangles that are pointing towards each other. That's telling the calculator, I believe my answer is somewhere between here. And that's the only place the calculator is going to look for an answer then. When it says guess, you can just press enter, and it gives us our maximum. Now, when we report this answer, we need to make sure we answer the question that was asked. So it says, during which month? So we don't want to say 1.5, because 1.5 is not a month. Like, it doesn't say that on my calendar. So we need to say, what does that mean? So in the chart, it says that we're going from January to May, and that's 0 to 4. So month 1.5 would be when? Halfway through February. Month 0 is January in this chart. Month 1 is February in this chart. So 1.5 would be halfway through February. Okay, so when it says what month, we need to make sure we're giving a month, not just a number. And what was that rate? About 4.5%. Then we take the Y value. Okay. Questions on that? Part C then asks, at what times was the interest rate 4.25? So we're looking for where this thing has height of 4.25, and it gives us a hint here by putting it in italics, times plural. So we're going to be going for two answers here. What we're going to do is go into our y equals, and in the second equation spot, we're going to type in 4.25, that rate that we want it to be. And then I'm going to go back to my graph. And I want to know where our model says that we hit that 4.25. So I want to know where those two lines are going to intersect each other. The intersect option is in the same location as the maximum option. So we're going to go second, trace, but this time I'm going to choose the option that says intersect. It will ask you first curve, you can just hit enter. It'll ask you second curve, you can just hit enter. When it says guess, get that blinking cursor closer to your first answer. So I'm going to move that little cursor, little blinking dot, over closer to my first answer. You don't have to worry about being perfect as long as it's close to it. That's good. And it gives me the first answer of about 0.54 or 0.5. Since it says at what times and not during what month, 0.5 would be a fine answer. Okay? If it said what month, we would want to say that that's January. That'd be halfway through January. Then we want the second answer as well, and we find it in the same way. So we're going to go second, trace, choose the intersect option. First curve, second curve, you can just hit enter, but then when it says guess, move yourself closer to that second answer and hit enter. And we get about 2.5 or 2.6 there. And again, since it says times, it's okay to give that decimal answer. If it said during what month, we would want to say that that's actually halfway through March. Questions? I need to give you some specific directions on your homework because it's not really very clear what you are supposed to do on these questions. So the first question on your homework is number 36. And in number 36, you're given one chart of data, and all you need to do there is find your quadratic regression. You don't need to plot it at all. Just the quadratic regression is good for that. The directions in the problem say something about using a system of equations to write the quadratic model. That's how you do this thing by hand, and it's not pretty. We're not doing it by hand, so just use your calculator to find a quadratic regression.
Is that just the equation?
Yes, just the
So
equation.
what's
It should be a y